Okay, I'm going to give people a few minutes to come on in.
Daniel's not here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Mimi Hicklin. I'm the program coordinator for the Charter for Compassion. I'm so happy to be with you all today for this session in our series on compassionate community webinars. As many of you know, the Charter has been hosting these webinars once a month, featuring the work of compassionate initiatives across the globe. While no two communities are identical, we know that taking a deep dive into the challenges and successes that an individual community faces reminds us of our commonalities. And it is here that we find insight and support. So today, our deep dive is going to be with Sooke, British Columbia. Sooke is a small community on the west coast of Canada that has made great strides in implementing their compassionate action plan over the last couple of years. Compassionate Sooke is also just a delightful team to work with, truly a dream, very engaged, and they have prepared a wonderful presentation for you all. I'm so excited for you to see it. Before we begin, I do want to take care of some quick housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded, so everyone who registered will receive a copy of that recording. The chat box is open, so if you hover over the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a little chat icon. Feel free to make comments or questions there. This is an hour-long session, so there may or may not be time for Q&A at the end, but the Sooke team has graciously offered to reply to any post-webinar questions via email, and I dropped that contact info in the chat as well. I'll also save the chat from this webinar along with the recording, so we can follow up that way. I think that's it. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our team.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rick Eby.
And mine is Don Brown. And we have the pleasure of being the moderators for this webinar today.
As you can see from this video, Sooke is an incredible area of natural beauty. It is a great place to live, a great place to raise a family, a great place to retire.
In addition to its small town feel, Sooke has a vibrant volunteer community with over 200 nonprofits operating in our town of 13,000 people.
So how did this small town come to be a part of the Charter for Compassion?
Well, in 2017, a diverse group of individuals came together to form the Sooke Multi-Belief Initiative.
Right from the beginning, we determined that we would respect our differences regarding faith and beliefs, focus on our commonalities in the principle of the Golden Rule, and collaborate together on projects that would contribute to the good of our community.
And our first project was to promote the Charter for Compassion. And how did we do this, Rick?
Well, in the spring of 2018, at a community event called Sooke Talks, Don and I gave a 10-minute talk entitled Unity in Our Community, Promoting the Charter for Compassion.
And we had a lot of fun doing this.
We did.
Yes. In addition to many people signing the charter in the weeks that followed, our multi-belief initiative then facilitated 2 community meetings in which over 30 service groups participated.
These consultations identified 5 primary issues that are in need of compassionate attention and action.
These issues form the heart of Sooke's Compassionate Action Plan, which on May 13, 2019, was endorsed by the District of Sooke, the municipality council of our district. Then it was submitted to the Charter for Compassion International, resulting in Sooke being recognized as a compassionate community.
Mother Teresa said, "I don't do great things. I do small things with great love. Knowingly or unknowingly, this is the ethos of our community."
And today, we'll be presenting 6 interviews by members of the Sooke Multi-Belief Initiative with leaders in our community.
It's important to state that these 6 interviews only tell you a part of the greater story being written in Sooke. We're grateful for the many other individuals and groups who are hard at work to make a difference.
And our first interview is by Koshin Moonfist with Maya Tate, the mayor of the District of Sooke, and a strong promoter of Sooke as a compassionate community right from the beginning of this initiative.
Hello, Maya. Nice to see you today.
And you as well.
Thank you. How have you seen Sooke evolve as a compassionate community over the past few years?
Well, Sooke, as you know, is a growing community and growing in population and growing with challenges. However, what I continually see are residents and not-for-profits and community volunteers rise up together to meet those challenges head on. So whether it's a tragedy in our community, concerns around wildfire, a pandemic, where all sorts of supports and resources are needed, you continually see our community rise up and say, okay, what is the problem? We're here to help. What can we do? How can we do this together? And I think that's really fascinating, and it's wonderful as we continue to grow that we're not losing that sense of volunteerism and the commitment to look out for one another.
What compassionate actions do you see happening right now here in Sooke?
And so through the pandemic and even prior, we know that we've had folks living in really rough situations. Rural homelessness is one that has been a part of our community fabric for decades now. And in the 80s, a small group of volunteers formed to reach out and to support folks that had fallen on hard times. Well, that continues to this day. And certainly while we had plans to study it further, as the pandemic came, there was a need to rise up and address it head on. And the volunteers came together, created an action plan, and are continuing to serve the population today, and also are building up and accessing resources, some which we knew of and others that we didn't know, but are working closely together to help people along. We also know that children have been going to school hungry. And our food bank, along with many others, have said that's unacceptable and we're going to do something about it. And they have, providing safe snacks and healthy snacks. And residents are continuing to give throughout the year. Our EMCS students are aware of this and they're doing their Spring Out of Hunger campaign. So even in a time where classes are not fully in, the pandemic is hindering studies, we see our high school students wanting to make change and to do something positive to support others. So there's some of these examples, and I know that there's many more community groups reaching out to one another, and even district staff, well aware of some seniors living in isolation, making calls out, doing grocery shopping, and supporting. And you continually hear of these stories every day.
Are these and more actions that you see in the future to make Sooke an even more compassionate, or to continue the compassion within Sooke?
I do. I mean, the district can't do everything. We certainly strive to, but in some cases, it's forming those partnerships. It's providing resources and supports to not-for-profit groups so that they can go and do the good work that they're ready to do. And we have many new residents that are attracted to the small town charm, the friendliness of the area, the sense of community, and they want to be a part of it. And so that's really exciting as well, as we see new residents come in with great ideas. And we also want to preserve what other character and sort of sense of place that we've already established and not lose that. And so there's a way I see forward is a blending of new and emerging ideas along with tradition and others, and finding a way to create a space that's open to everybody.
That's really wonderful. What that made me think of was an interaction that the district recently had with the Sooke Nation. And I've always wanted more of an interaction with them relative to the district. Any words?
So we're grateful that we are home on the South's traditional lands. And since early 2006, the Sooke and the district have had a memorandum of understanding on how our two governments will grow and work together. And so it's exciting with the nation building that's occurring right now. There is a need for services and infrastructure to the Sooke on their lands, and we're rapidly working to progress all of that. And also there's an opportunity to just listen and learn, and to have our awareness grow and build so that we can ensure every child has the same opportunities in the future.
I feel that right now, where we're at here in Sooke on a path forward relative to compassionate action that the district can do and make is to keep strong and keep doing everything that you're doing. It's so people oriented. I find it incredibly social.
Well, as the local governing body, it's important for council to set policy. That is one of our jobs, is to set and direct policy. And so what I mean by that is a framework that is inclusive and is safe. So we, for example, adopted a policy on when and how we fly the district flag. And within that policy document, it talks about how we're going to do this, but also what we won't do. So we won't fly a flag that sends out a hate message. So I'm using that as an example that all of our policy needs to come from a place of fairness, from inclusivity, from compassion, from acceptance of all. And when we embed that into our legislation, then it creates a better future, and one that's open to everybody. Recently, the Chamber of Commerce has held a cultural sensitivity workshop for their members and non-members, with self-directed learning on what truth and reconciliation really means. So that's one group, as we're in a reconciling world, that felt their membership could benefit from more awareness and training. We know that the Rotary Club continues to find ways to also put in infrastructure for all of the community to enjoy. The Rotary Pier is one great example of that. The Sooke Community Association is getting their ball fields open to play and is readying the campground is open to accept visitors and locals to enjoy our beautiful community. And we also have many other groups that have taken their work online to continue membership engagement, but also to share out what's happening here in the community. And of course, our EMCS students are always aware of the food bank and the need for challenges, and they've just completed their Spring Out of Hunger campaign.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. You say EMCS, and the first thing that popped into my head, Phoebe Dunbar and what she did to get that skeleton of the whale that was recently posted by Alita Piers.
Yes, and this example of the Historical Society showing and showcasing the various gems in our community as well. So I think we're waiting for a time where we can gather together in person, because as humans, we all miss one another. But at the same time, even the Sooke Philharmonic with their Secret Garden Tour is taking it virtually online. The Fine Arts Show is the same, and really doing the best with the reality that we're facing. So I really applaud all the volunteers and organizers for continually to find ways to be creative and innovate, to uphold the health orders, but also keep our community entertained and vibrant.
Maya expresses eloquently how she sees the whole community, residents, nonprofits, local and provincial government working together to address the special needs of rural communities such as ours.
She also talked about our special relationship with the Sooke Nation, recognizing the relationship of the two governments, the opportunity for us to listen, to better understand each other, and to work together so that everyone benefits from the development of our shared community.
The relationship with the Sooke Nation is particularly significant to us, as in 2020, SMBI organized a joint proclamation signed by the mayor and Gordon Planes, chief of the Sooke Nation, recognizing Sooke as a compassionate city and proclaiming February 1st to 7th as Interfaith Harmony Week in the Sooke Nation and the district of Sooke.
The mayor gave an excellent introduction to the issues and the groups addressing these issues who will be interviewed during this webinar.
Which brings us to our next interview by Mark Ziegler with Sherry Thompson, Executive Director of the Sooke Shelter Society.
Sherry, you've been involved with helping the homeless people in Sooke for decades. What changes, what compassionate actions have you seen in the past, and where are we now?
Well, when I first started getting involved with the homeless community in Sooke, we had the crisis center. And a few years later, I noticed that churches were also getting involved. They would have some community dinners, and the Anglican Church actually started their Friday luncheon, which was initiated by one of the homeless people. So that was pretty cool, and a lot of the, his friends were cheering him on doing this. He was, letting them know there, something more needs to be done in this community, right? And also the Sooke Baptist Church also opened up their breakfast on Mondays and Wednesdays. So, and then throughout the years, despite like all of that, that's all great stuff, but there needed to be more done. In 2017, I had the opportunity to get involved and start advocating to make some positive solution-based changes in Sooke. Started advocating for the Housing First strategy for Sooke, and we started providing supports for the homeless community to help alleviate some of their struggles living outdoors. So we were providing tents and sleeping bags and other outdoor gear, and food, grocery gift cards, and continuing to advocate. And then also the Sooke Homelessness Coalition formed as well in 2018. And that brought together a lot of people and organizations so that we could collaborate to make, to bring those solutions to Sooke.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned a crisis center, but there might have been maybe 30 to 50 people living in the rough or couch surfing, or were there more than that at that time?
Well, when we first started, like in 2017, we knew of about 10 people. In 2018, we knew, like early 2018, we knew of 50 people. And then it just increased from there. And then some of them come and go as well.
So there was no permanent shelter at that time, but was there later a temporary shelter, an emergency shelter?
There was. In 2019, it was 2019, yeah, sorry, 2019, the extreme weather program came to Sooke, and that was at the CRD office out on, off of Otter Point Road, Butler Road. So it was a ways out of Sooke, so it did have its challenges. We were having to drive around and find people to take them to the shelter. It was a bit of a challenge.
And then was there sort of a temporary shelter, a couple of them locations in Sooke for temporary shelters?
Yes, Sooke was really fortunate to get a temporary emergency shelter at the Sea Park Arena. And that was for about 2 months there. Then the contract ended. So then the residents were left out on the streets again. So while that was occurring, BC Housing was looking for another location, and they were successful. They found a location. Yeah. And then from there, it was Well, BC Housing was looking for a permanent location, and they were successful in finding the Hope Center. They purchased the Hope Center, and so now our shelter has a permanent location at the Hope Center. And soon the residents will be moving into their own units upstairs in the Hope Center. So it'll be operated as supportive housing. So we'll have wraparound supports, and then the where the shelter is right now, that's going to be renovated, and we'll have a commercial kitchen, some offices for wraparound supports and just for the Sooke Shelter Society and men. So well, we're really excited about that.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I mean that's a huge solution to bringing dignity into these people's lives and stability into these people's lives. There was a lot of funding that was available throughout the last year with this pandemic, and that's starting to decrease. And so we're losing some of our supports because the other organizations aren't getting the funding to continue on with those professions, right, to come and provide supports for our clients and residents. So that's a concern. And I think that this really should have been it shouldn't stop just because the pandemic is almost over or possibly over, I don't know, right? But that's what it's looking like right now. So that's a concern. I think that we need to keep moving forward with the progress that we had seen in the last year, and how so many homeless people across the world, across Canada, have been getting housed and sheltered and getting that wraparound supports, and that needs to continue. We shouldn't stop.
Thank you very much, Sherry, and I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Sherry talked about the Housing First program. What did she mean by that, Don?
Well, the original program was to provide homeless people with independent housing, but they soon found that for some homeless people, they required much more assistance before they moved into independent living accommodations.
Is this what Sherry was alluding to when she spoke of wraparound services?
Yes. Wraparound services include individual case planning for each transition house resident, primary health care, substance use management and supports, applications for income assistance or disability, reclamation of identification documents, and assistance from other government agencies and related services.
The strategies that were developed during the pandemic have proven to be a successful model for addressing homelessness. But as Sherry alluded to, the challenge now will be securing permanent funding for the program.
Yes. And our next interview by Mark is with Kim Metzer, the director of the Sooke Food Bank Society, sharing the services they provide, which include much more than providing food services to those in need.
Kim, thank you very much for coming in to speak to us about the Sooke Food Bank. And I have a sort of a three-part question for you.
Okay.
About the origins of the food bank, the compassionate actions that started it up, and perhaps you could describe that.
Okay, so from what I understand, because I wasn't in Sooke when it started, I believe in the 80s, and how it used to work is you would call in, and then someone would take your order and then they'd deliver it. And I believe it was like maybe 15 to 30 families. Now, fast forward, people come to the hall. We have a big Christmas program. We do backpacks, back to school. We help people with work clothes, birthday parties. We've helped with funerals. We've, you kind of, we take care of our community, our food bank community.
You were telling me that the number of hampers that's given out has increased in recent years.
Yes.
And can you give us a sense of the scale of your operation, of your service?
So in 2011, it would be a busy week if we hit 80 families. That's when I first came. Now, a busy week is about 200 families, and 80 would be like sort of a slow week. Yeah. We're a bedroom community to a lot of jobs in Langford, so therefore we have a lot of people that live out here that don't necessarily work out here, or a lot of people that couldn't afford to stay in the city, so they moved out here, and that's kind of where we're at.
Have you been affected by events? You mentioned to me on another occasion something, the fire at Fort McMurray.
Yes.
It increased the demand even here in Sooke, and of course COVID.
Yes.
And
Well, COVID really put into place like how important it is to have an emergency plan for not just Sooke, but for every community. So we sort of had one in place for an earthquake. Well, what we thought we were prepared for. We were not prepared. So what happened when the pandemic first happened, a lot of places closed right away. So that would be like food kitchens and other places where people are getting their food from. So we did not close. So we didn't take a day off from March until July of last year, because poverty, people that don't know food banking don't know that you can only be poor the first 3 weeks of the month, because that's when we're there. You're in crisis. So we tried to be available every day. And we really found that there was a lot of people that I was working and I have a good job waitressing or whatever. And all of a sudden those people don't have, they're barely making it. Sorting out who was going to get what kind of funding for people was really confusing at the beginning. And then, of course, our regular clients with mental health were really concerned about if we were going to close down and not open up again. So what we found is we need to have more food on hand. If there was a situation where everything got closed down and we were that source, we have to have food here. So we have storage units all over the place. We don't necessarily have it in our building. So it's been a whole learning challenges, all these things. Yeah.
now, the source of your food, does any of the grocers in Sooke provide food? Or?
Oh, we are so blessed. So not only the grocers, we have great relationships with all the stores in Sooke. We're blessed out here. We've been able to prove that with a little bit of help, a lot of times these people only use the food bank once or twice. And so they're supportive when we have these ideas like, let's do backpacks, let's do whatever, it supports seniors. So we support Meals on Wheels, we support Vital Vittles, Grace Gardens, which I can't even put into words what that has done for the quality
the
of
Baptist
food.
church,
The
is it?
Baptist church with the Grace Gardens. And in the beginning, I know people laughed and nobody thought that that was going to be what it is. And now when you go to that place and the thousands of pounds of food we get from that garden,
Thousands.
it's amazing. And the quality, the Sooke Food Bank, we're not going to give you, some places you'll have to go and glean the food yourself. So you might say you food rescued grapes from a grocery store. And then those grapes that are in that bag just go right into your food bag. Well, they could be yucky or you don't know. Where in our food bank, we clean all that out before it goes out to the public. And so when we started bringing in fresh stuff, like that you don't have to do that for, it's a sense of pride for the volunteers handing out that food. And for the client, it's people invested in me, right? Like we care enough to make sure you've got really good quality food. And I think it helps people care about themselves.
Do you have any sort of plans for the future and changing your operation in any way?
So what we would like to do eventually is get our own building. And we'd like to be able to offer work experience for people as far as warehouse work, for instance. We'd be able to do a lot on how to manage a warehouse. Perhaps we could have handicapped people come in and do work experience. Right now, we're not in a safe enough building to, and it's not a big enough workspace to really be offering those kind of services. So we'd love to do that. We'd love to offer more support programs like cooking and how to prepare food and store food. Those are dream programs that we'd love to offer our clients. More gardening classes. So we do offer a little bit of gardening in the spring, but we'd like to be able to really support that and offer more throughout the year.
That's an incredible vision. Well, you've covered a great deal, and thank you very much for coming today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm excited for Sooke.
The food bank is one of Sooke's keystone volunteer services.
Not only providing food for those in need, but also clothes and many other needs. Kim mentioned backpacks. What did she mean by that, Rick?
Well, at the start of every new school year, Kim secures backpacks, and then with the help of businesses and individuals, she fills these backpacks with school supplies for kids in need.
Thank you, Rick. There are many local businesses providing food, clothing, and other materials at no cost. Rick, Kim especially praised the Sooke Baptist Church's Grace Gardens. As the pastor of the Baptist Church, can you tell us a little more about the Grace Gardens?
Just two things. The church has dedicated approximately 3/4 of an acre to the growing of fruit and vegetables. This is our 4th growing season, and the vision of the garden was that everything we grow there goes free of charge to the food bank. Last year, we were able to provide in excess of 5,000 pounds.
Thank you, Rick. That's a wonderful service. Next, Andy Schell will be interviewing Mary Dunn, the president of the Sooke Region Communities Health Network, and Rick Robinson, the vice president of the Sooke Region Communities Health Network. He's going to be talking about social isolation.
Mary and Rick, it's a pleasure to meet you both. Today, we really want to talk about the issue of social isolation and collaboration among the various agencies that deal with social isolation. So maybe you can talk or begin to talk about the past and then talk about the present and then where you'd like to see things go in the future.
Around social isolation, you know, a lot of agencies would do their own work. Now we're seeing agencies working together more to try and come up with solutions. We did a research study 10 years ago around the seniors, looking at the whole aspect of what do they need in order to age in place. 25% of the seniors that were part of that study, which was about 100, identified social isolation as being an issue.
Interesting. So that was the past. That's a little bit of the research you've done. Besides from the seniors, is this an issue with other age groups? Or?
Absolutely. I think social isolation happens across the entire population, and it happens for many reasons. And so, you know, you can live in a community, you can live right next door to 100 people and still feel that social isolation depending on what's going on in your own life. It can be from retirement, it can be from mental health and addictions issues, from physical issues, mobility issues, hearing loss. It can happen from life situations. A lot of our new moms feel a lot of social isolation given that they're suddenly in their homes in a new role that they've never been in before and are grappling with.
And COVID certainly hasn't helped that situation. So.
COVID has intensified the feelings of isolation profoundly, yes.
Is this an issue with youth as well? Have you found any experiences with that?
Yeah, certainly with youth, particularly with COVID, and not attending school regularly has been a real issue with many children, youth in general. It's reflective of just the nature of the beast in terms of being at home, being on the internet. You may have, you know, 300 friends or 400 friends on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever app you're using, but are they really friends? You know, it's not the same as face-to-face friendship.
Yeah, clearly. So is this still an issue today? It's not just the past. It's something that's happening within those various demographic groups within our community today.
Absolutely, and I think there are things we can do to help address the issues of social isolation. And as I mentioned, you know, depending on what's going on with you personally, all those things can be in place and you can still feel that isolation. So I'm not sure it's something that will ever go away, but I think it's something that we are becoming more aware of and looking at how we can respond to that. A huge issue for the seniors was the loss of their seniors drop-in center over 10 years ago. So that meeting place for seniors to come together and know that people are looking out for them and will call if they don't show up and will be there to help them really intensified the isolation that we've been seeing in seniors, and that is something that we have been working on.
Good. If you had unlimited resources, what would you want to see happen in the future?
Well, we have a big one. If anybody wins the huge lottery, it's our desire to build an elders complex in Sooke, and that would have affordable housing, so subsidized housing for our elders. We would be, having off-reserve Indigenous elders there, so it would be across the board, as well as having the seniors drop-in center on the main floor and other services that will help keep seniors in their home for longer and decrease those issues of isolation. We have about 17 agencies that we'd be working in collaboration with to make this work. So it would be creating a community, and we're hoping to have some intergenerational work happening as well, bringing our youth in to make those connections with our seniors as well.
If you had a single message for people who perhaps have not been involved in social agencies in town over the last few years, what would that message be?
Come to our AGMs. All of us have an annual general meeting. Ours is certainly open to the public. It should be happening, we hope, in June this month, or maybe July.
Or August.
Or August.
Yeah.
As we, there's a lot of reporting that has to happen, and we need board approval for that. But it'll be happening within the next few months. And every other agency, nonprofits, in the same boat. We all have AGMs, and I think the vast majority are open to the public. So attend. The meetings right now will be virtual, and you'll get a Zoom link or some video conferencing link, and participate, even if you're just listening to what's happening. AGMs there's usually a chair's report that goes over what's been happening in the last year, and maybe talks about the future a little bit as well. The future is very bright. We have so many volunteers in this community. As Mary said, we'd like to think of ourselves as the volunteer capital of Canada. There's more than 200 nonprofit agencies here with many people participating. So join us. It's rewarding. It's an opportunity to give back from yourself to the community and participate.
Mary, Rick, thank you very much.
The Community's Health Network has done some excellent research related to a broad range of issues, including social isolation, homelessness, food security, youth activities, and mental health and addictions. It also has an ongoing program promoting volunteerism in the Sooke community.
One of the services that directly addresses social isolation among seniors is its Age in Place program, providing seniors with non-medical support, including social calls, grocery shopping, and prescription pickup.
As the pandemic restrictions ease, regular services, including social visits, light housekeeping, and yard work, will restart.
The Health Network is one of the most vibrant volunteer organizations in Sooke. We'll be hearing more from Mary and Rick in a later video.
Our next interview is by Andy with Dr. Jeff Pocock, a semi-retired physician who has worked for many years providing medical services in the Sooke area. He is currently focused on mental health and addictions. He will be talking about this particular field in his next interview.
Dr. Pocock, for someone who's lived in the area for 17 years, you're very familiar, I'm sure, with most of the health issues in the Sooke region. So today we're really interested in getting your perspective on what has happened in the past with treating people with substance use disorders or with mental illness, and what is happening today and what needs to happen in the future.
Okay, so when I first arrived here, I think there was some services through what was known as CASA back in the day. I think it has a new name now. They were provided 2 or 3 days a week through Pacific. I think it's called the Pacific Services now. That's down, I think, to 2 days a week now. At that time, there wasn't actually even a recognized specialty of addiction medicine at that time. I was doing some addiction care, mostly with methadone in my practice with just a few people, and was a full-service GP here. And as we expanded the services and all the doctors got together and made the clinics bigger, my interest in that has grown over the years to the point where 3 years ago I stopped doing general practice and focused entirely on addiction medicine with a small bit of chronic pain, and I've done extra training in that so that I can try and do it properly.
What do we need to do? Because that's really what the whole organization is about.
Well, one personal interest is we need to find someone to take my place because I'm not going to do this forever. So I'm trying to find someone to mentor into that role, and hopefully more than one person. But we also need to, we just need to change the way we approach the problem generally. The people who I try to help often don't have computers, don't even have cell phones half the time, or if they do, their minutes run out before they can do anything. And so trying to even make appointments in the days of the pandemic where there are no drop-in clinics anymore is just impossible. So their healthcare generally, they still have other healthcare needs and they're just really hard to meet because they can't access the care. And it's not anybody's fault, it's just the community's grown so fast and the problems have grown so fast that the demand is outweighing what could be provided.
Are you optimistic? Given what's happened in the past, are you seeing that people are paying more attention to these issues?
Well, there's definitely been positive change since I've been here. I mean, I don't think anyone even talked about it, and I don't think it was even recognized as being a problem in our town when I came here. I mean, certainly the physicians didn't recognize it as a problem, I don't think. But then you don't find the worms unless you lift up the bricks. And so as we're starting to look harder, and now because I'm doing what I'm doing, we're talking about it more. So I'm hopefully increasing other people's capacity too as we go along. So yeah, I am optimistic. I don't think it'll happen fast enough for a lot of people, but I think that this community has the medical will, it has the political will, it has the will in so many other parts to make these things happen. And we mustn't forget, we're not just talking about opiates. I mean, alcohol is a huge problem. And there's always tobacco, which may not wreck lives in the same social way, but still a huge problem, and many other substances besides. So there's a lot of work to be done in the terms of substance use disorder generally. Just it's a bit too easy to pigeonhole it into just, oh, those people who use needles, when actually there's less people dying from opiate use disorder than there are dying from nicotine use disorder or alcohol use disorder every year. So it's a big problem, yeah.
Is a mental health issue expanding, growing in Sooke, do you think?
Everything's got worse in the pandemic, but I don't think mental health disorders are any worse in Sooke than anywhere else. And especially now that the price of property here is no better than anywhere else. I mean, in days gone by, places with the lowest rent would often end up with the people who needed the most services, but had the least services because that's just the history behind it. So sadly, if you lived in Victoria or Vancouver, you got all the services you needed, but you didn't live there if you didn't have much money.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your input to this.
You're very welcome.
Dr. Pocock certainly pointed out how the pandemic has hit people with mental ill health and addictions particularly hard. His personal caseload has increased from a few patients to more than 50 patients in Sooke alone.
Providing improved health services for our growing community presents an ongoing challenge. The expansion of the West Coast Family Medical Clinic and the provision of 5 more healthcare professionals for the community will contribute to providing basic medical services to more members of our community.
However, as Dr. Pocock said, the demand for health services in our growing community is greater than the available resources. Although we have 5 more positions identified, it has been a real challenge to find people to fill them.
I like what Dr. Pocock said. Some people just need some basic assistance to get back on their feet. Someone to help them navigate through the various healthcare agencies, to even lend them a phone to make appointments and provide transportation to get them to their meetings.
And volunteers in Sooke are providing these basic services.
The last of our sessions is with Kosheen interviewing Mary and Rick from the Sooke Region's Community Health Network, talking about collaboration in the Sooke community.
Well, hello and good day, Mary, Rick. It's really nice to have you here today.
Thank you, Moonfist. Thanks for inviting us.
How have you seen Sooke evolve, in collaboration with Compassionate Actions?
Yeah, I'd have to say there's been a lot of evolution in terms of collaboration in the past few years. When I first moved here, that did not happen between organizations. And that was a huge mission of CHI, the Community Health Initiative, that's one of our 4 founders, was to bring organizations together to work together on issues rather than competing for funds and competing for what's happening. And so we're seeing that happen a lot. Almost all new initiatives in Sooke now have a form of collaboration as part of them, organizations working together.
Wonderful. This collaboration, is there anywhere specific or any particular way that happens?
Sure. I think collaboration happens on a number of different levels, some of them much more formal than others in terms of sharing of funding, sharing of running of programs, sharing of the outcomes of those programs to people that are more supportive of what you're doing, maybe a bit more on the side, or providing their services to assist but aren't necessarily part of that collaboration. A good example of that was the COVID homelessness shelter that happened this year, in that, you know, there were probably about 7 agencies that came together to make that a success.
I mean, it's very encouraging to see the progress that we've made in Sooke over the last few years. And it's not just our organization, as Mary said, there's many organizations that are working collaboratively at the same table, sharing resources, sharing talents and expertise as well. So it's very encouraging. The future is bright.
Yeah, and I mean, that flows perfectly right into, what was, the where is it going in the future, the collaboration, and compassion, in Sooke to further all of this. What are a few of the most important points when interacting?
I think the first one is respect for each organization's understanding their philosophical challenges, differences between organizations, and hopefully sharing the same goals. That's what drives you, puts you at the same table, which is incredibly important as we move forward. I think it's really important to acknowledge the buy-in from the District of Sooke in all of this. They've been incredibly supportive of our organization and other organizations, often with, a specific example, the homelessness issue. Often they're taking the angry phone calls or the phone calls of concern or whatever. They've done a wonderful job in managing public perception and shifting for the very few people in Sooke that were negative about the homelessness issue and using Sea Park, etc. Changing the dynamics and changing the mindset of those naysayers in Sooke. So at the end of that, the support from the citizens of Sooke was amazing. Dropping off food, positive letters to the editor, etc. So that changed the perception of those in need, and it was just evidence of the compassion that this little community of Sooke has for those that are less fortunate.
Yeah.
Rick and Mary gave an excellent summary of how various agencies have come together to provide their expertise, talents, and resources to achieve successful outcomes. This interview really sums up a theme that is expressed in all the interviews: the collaboration among volunteer nonprofits, the business community, the district, and individual community members. This collaboration builds a culture of ever-strengthening compassionate action throughout our community.
We have made good progress, but as the people being interviewed have stated, there's more to be done in the area of affordable housing, physical and mental health services, addictions recovery, income assistance, food security, and poverty reduction.
Also is the importance of fostering a closer relationship with our First Nations friends and the nation's administrative institutions. It really comes down to people of our community, knowing that everyday acts of kindness and compassion, helping others, creates a better place for all of us.
So thank you for this opportunity to tell you about our town and its people. We're ready for your questions.
Thank you all. It's so heartening to see the good work that's being done in your community. At the charter, we're always saying that you can't lead a compassionate community initiative alone. And this presentation was a testament to the value of teamwork and the robust partner network that you've cultivated. As I think Rick said in one of your video interviews, the future is bright. And after watching this session, I wholeheartedly agree. Someone in the chat did ask about a template for small communities that are just getting started. I mentioned earlier that no two communities are identical. So on our end, there isn't really a one size fits all template. We do have resources available on the Charter for Compassion website. I dropped that link in chat as well. And I'm always available to talk about community building. My email address is mimi@charterforcompassion.org. But do you, Sooke friends, have any immediate thoughts about suggestions for a small community getting started?
I think really it comes down to people getting together and meeting about different issues. When we had the different agencies come together, what we found is that people would say, this is an issue, and other organizations say, well, I can do this, and another organization say, I can do that. And together they make something better together. So it's a question of bringing people together, I think, that will really help the community grow, rather than people trying to do things independently.
I'd support that, what Don said as well. I remember when we had the community initiatives shortly after the Sooke talks, and I was here, and it was in this room where we're meeting today, and I observed people connecting with one another who didn't know each other. And from that, then partnerships began to be forged. I'm not sure if any of our other members who are here would want to add to that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So that was actually the one question that we had in the chat. We had a lot of applause for the work that you're doing. And I know that folks have a lot to ruminate on following this presentation. But hats off to you. This has been just an inspiring morning. For everyone watching, please keep your eyes peeled for email. I'll include a recording of this session as well as a contact address for the Sooke team should you have any lingering questions or thoughts for them. As always, it has been wonderful spending my morning with you, learning about a compassionate community. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Goodbye.